Use headphones for best experience.
It was past midnight when Father O'Connor knelt alone in the silent cathedral. The only light came from the red glass sanctuary lamp and a handful of votive candles, their flames quivering in the dark like anxious souls. As the old priest whispered his prayers, a sound disturbed the stillness, a footstep echoing in the nave. He turned, peering into the shadows between the pillars. "Hello, is someone there?" His voice carried softly, swallowed by the vastness of the church. At first, nothing answered. Then a figure emerged from the darkness at the edge of the candlelight, a tall man in a black coat. His face was gaunt, his skin as pale as wax. What struck Father O'Connor most were the stranger's eyes. They glinted in the dimness, a strange, shifting gray, the color of smoke. The priest stood, heart quickening with inexplicable dread. "My son, are you lost? The church is closed at this hour." The man stepped forward, and Father O'Connor glimpsed dark, wet stains spattered across the front of his coat. A metallic scent of blood wafted on the air. The priest's throat went dry. "Are you hurt? Do you need help?" The stranger smiled. His lips were unnaturally thin, peeling back from teeth that looked too many and too sharp. "I need a great many things, Father," he said softly, "but not your help." In the next breath, the man's pale hands rose to his own face and tore at it. The skin split like a fleshy mask, revealing raw muscles slick with blood. Father O'Connor staggered back, a strangled cry on his tongue. In the wavering candlelight, he saw the outline of something inhuman emerging from the man's collapsing shape. A withered shadow with sunken, smoke-gray eyes and limbs that hung unnaturally, covered in bleeding wounds. The priest had time for only a single, despairing gasp. A chorus of voices hissed from that darkness, a single word dripping with malice. "Purgatory." Then the darkness rushed forward, and Father O'Connor's scream was lost in the vastness of the cathedral. Damian arrived at St. Vincent's Cathedral at dawn, sunlight slanting between Manhattan skyscrapers. He had expected his first week as a newly ordained priest to be full of humble routine and quiet joy. Instead, he found uneasy whispers and anxious faces. An older priest hurried by, murmuring a prayer. Two nuns in a corner fingered rosary beads with trembling hands. Something was wrong. In the rectory office, Father Thomas, the parish vicar, was on the phone with the police. He hung up as Damian entered. "Father O'Connor is missing," he said, voice grim and tired. Damian's heart sank. O'Connor was the pastor he was to assist, a guiding mentor. "Missing? Since when?" "He didn't return to the rectory last night," Father Thomas replied. "This morning, the sacristan found the cathedral doors wide open. Father O'Connor's car is still here, but no sign of him." A chill ran through Damian. He glanced at the great wooden doors down the hall, ajar and unguarded. Was there any sign of foul play? Nothing. No struggle, nothing taken. Just this. Father Thomas opened his hand, revealing a silver crucifix on a broken chain, Father O'Connor's cross. Dark flecks of dried blood marred the tiny Christ figure. Damian took the cross gingerly. The metal felt cold, and a smear of blood came off on his thumb. He swallowed hard. Who would spill a priest's blood in a house of God? "The police have no leads," Father Thomas continued softly. "It's as if he vanished into thin air. All we can do is pray for his safety." "I understand," Damian said, slipping the blood-stained crucifix into his pocket. "I'll do whatever I can to help." Father Thomas managed a wan smile and squeezed Damian's shoulder. "Keep your faith, son. God has you here for a reason, perhaps to stand strong in Father O'Connor's place." Damian nodded. As he left the office, he silently vowed to stay strong, for the parish and for Father O'Connor. He spent the day immersed in his duties, leading morning mass, visiting the sick, ladling soup for the homeless at the church kitchen. All the while, whispers about Father O'Connor's disappearance swirled around him. Some suspected a crazed vagrant or criminal. Others dared to suggest a darker culprit. "Demon!" he heard one woman hiss before crossing herself. The idea seemed absurd in modern Manhattan, yet a priest had vanished from behind locked doors. Damian recalled childhood tales of devils and exorcisms his Irish grandmother used to tell. That evening, after a modest dinner with the other priests, Damian volunteered to take the late confessional shift. The cathedral was nearly empty, its vastness filled with dim light and silence. Perhaps someone would come who knew something, or perhaps he simply needed the solace of the confessional after such a day. Just before 9, someone slipped into the confessional. Through the screen, he saw the faint outline of a woman shrouded in a dark coat and scarf. "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned," she whispered. Her voice was low and oddly lilting. "How long has it been since your last confession?" Damian asked gently. A soft, mocking laugh filtered through the screen. "I have never truly confessed, Father." His muscles tensed at her tone. "Why come now, then?" "To tell you my sins," the woman purred, "and see if you can grant me absolution." She shifted, and for an instant light caught her eyes through the lattice. They were an unsettling gray, flat and cold as ash. "What sins do you wish to confess?" Damian said, a tremor creeping into his voice despite himself. "I have coveted the holy," she breathed, "tasted sanctity and found it sweet. I have stolen souls from God's house." Damian's mouth went dry. "Stolen? Souls? What do you mean?" She pressed closer to the screen. He could just make out the curve of her lips, painted blood red and smiling. "I tempt the righteous, Father. I peel away their pious skin to reveal the soft flesh of their desires. I lead them into darkness." She chuckled, a horrid, hungry sound. "Is that not a grievous sin?" A cold sweat broke out on Damian's brow. His hand found the crucifix in his pocket, fingers closing around it. "Peel away their skin." The phrase made him feel ill. Some part of him knew he was not speaking to a penitent woman at all, but to the very darkness that had taken Father O'Connor. "Who are you?" he whispered, throat tight. There was no answer, only the creak of the confessional door opening. Damian burst out of his side of the booth and into the nave. The adjacent compartment was empty, the door left ajar and gently swinging. Far down the center aisle, the silhouette of the woman in the dark coat slipped away toward the grand entrance. "Wait!" Damian called, hurrying after her. He reached the main doors just as they drifted closed. Outside on the steps, the cool night air hit his face. He caught a glimpse of the woman under a street lamp as she glided into the city's shadows. A pale cheek and red lips turned up in a triumphant smile. In a blink, she was gone, swallowed by the Manhattan night. A gust of wind rattled the church door behind him. It carried a scent that made Damian recoil, a charnel house reek of blood and burnt ashes. His stomach churned with the recognition of true evil. Slowly, Damian closed the heavy doors and bolted them tight. His heart thundered. Whatever had happened to Father O'Connor was not the work of any human agency. Evil, literal and ancient, had entered these walls, and it had spoken to him, laughed in his face. In the sacristy's faint light, Damian opened the old leather-bound Roman ritual, flipping to the rite of exorcism. His hands trembled, but not with fear alone. Within him stirred a fierce resolve. He fetched holy water and quietly blessed himself. If a demon prowled this church, he would face it with every weapon his faith provided. He cleaned Father O'Connor's crucifix with holy water, wiping away the dried blood. Then he hung the silver cross around his own neck. It was heavy and cold against his skin, but comforting too, an emblem of sacrifice and hope. "Lord, give me strength," he prayed under his breath. Outside, sirens wailed and taxis honked on Fifth Avenue, the world oblivious to the supernatural battle brewing in this sacred place. Within, the cavernous cathedral lay in hush and shadow, as if holding its breath. That night, Damian kept vigil in a front pew, rosary clutched tight. Hours passed in silent prayer. Once, just before dawn, he thought he saw a tall, spindly shadow flicker at the edge of a candle's glow. He rose, heart pounding, and stepped forward. The shadow melted back into the darkness, and in the stillness he heard a faint whisper that sounded like his own name carried on a breath of cold air. "Damian." He shuddered but stood firm. The enemy was near, circling like a predator. Soon, he knew, there would be a reckoning. Damian bowed his head and continued to pray until the first light of day stained the stained glass windows. On the second night of Damian's vigil, just past midnight, a figure appeared behind the altar. Damian rose from his knees, sensing a presence in the darkness. From the shadows, a frail voice whispered, "Damian, my boy." Father O'Connor stepped into the dim light. He looked ghost-pale and weary, his cassock torn, one hand outstretched. "Thank God you're here," he gasped. "Father O'Connor!" Damian rushed forward, relief and joy flooding him, until he saw the old priest's eyes. They were not the gentle blue he knew, but a flat, smoky gray. A crust of dried blood stained his wrist where a crucifix should have been. Damian halted, dread coiling in his gut. "You're not him," he breathed. The figure cocked its head. Its lips curved into a grin that looked wrong on Father O'Connor's face. "Clever boy," it rasped, the voice warping into a layered snarl. "See how well his skin suits me?" Revulsion and anger surged through Damian. He pulled the silver crucifix from around his neck and held it high. "In the name of Jesus Christ," he commanded, "show your true face." The thing threw back its head and laughed. Father O'Connor's skin rippled, then split down the middle with a wet tear. In a heartbeat, the human disguise sloughed to the floor like a shed husk. What rose from the ruined flesh was a nightmare-given form. The demon stood tall and skeletal, its body slick with blood from countless wounds that never healed. Its limbs dangled too long and crooked. Its face was a leering skull draped in tatters of muscle, and in its eye sockets smoldered two eyes the color of smoke. Damian staggered back, making the sign of the cross. The demon kicked aside the limp skin at its feet and stalked toward him, leaving smeared blood with each step. "So here we are," it hissed, voice echoing from its mutilated throat. "A righteous whelp armed with a toy cross. You think your faith can banish me, who has feasted on the faithful for ages?" "This is the house of God," Damian said fiercely, even as his heart pounded. "You are not welcome here." The demon's eyes flared. With terrifying speed, it lunged. A clawed hand lashed out and caught Damian across the chest. He cried out as pain burned through him. 4 gashes opened in his flesh, and warm blood trickled under his torn cassock. Staggering, he raised the crucifix again. The demon closed in, reeking of rot and hatred. "I smell your fear," it growled. "Your faith falters already." It swiped again, but this time Damian thrust the crucifix forward. The demon's claw struck the sacred metal and sizzled. The creature recoiled with a snarl, wisps of acrid smoke rising from its seared hand. Seizing the moment, Damian began to pray aloud, reciting the ancient exorcism rites he'd studied. Latin invocations poured from his lips. The demon howled, but for a moment it hesitated, held at bay by the holy words. Then it gathered itself and bared its fangs in a hideous grin. "I will rip your faith from you, boy," it snarled. The demon gathered its power. The marble floor cracked open behind Damian into a black pit, belching a wind of decay and distant wails. Damian's stomach lurched. A doorway to purgatory yawned at his back. The demon lunged and clamped a claw around Damian's arm, yanking him toward the abyss. Its smoke-filled eyes blazed as it hissed promises of dragging him down into darkness. Terror stabbed through Damian, but beneath it his faith burned bright. "No!" he gasped. Clutching the crucifix in his free hand, he pressed it hard against the demon's forearm. "Ecce crucium Domini!" he cried. The demon shrieked as the holy symbol seared its bloodied flesh. Its grip faltered, and Damian tore himself loose. He stumbled back from the edge of the pit, holding the cross high. The demon writhed in rage, but it skittered back toward the pit as Damian advanced, unwavering. Each sacred word from his lips struck the monster like a blow. The demon's form quivered, its wounds smoked, its strength unraveling under the onslaught of prayer. With a final despairing scream, it hurled itself at him, talons outstretched. Damian lunged as well, driving the crucifix into the demon's chest. A blast of white light erupted with a boom of thunder. The demon's final scream peaked, and then fell abruptly silent. When the light cleared, the demon was gone. The fissure snapped shut, leaving only silence and darkness. Every candle had been snuffed out, and only the red glow of the sanctuary lamp remained. Damian stood trembling, hardly believing it was over. The taste of ash clung to the air, and pain from his wounds now made itself known. Blood dripped onto the stone floor, but the evil presence had vanished. Soon, pale dawn light crept through the windows. Damian sank to his knees before the altar, exhausted and grateful. The demon left nothing behind but a few black stains that crumbled to dust. He realized he was still clutching the silver crucifix, now warm and flecked with his blood. He pressed it to his lips and whispered a prayer of thanks. Good had prevailed. the demon was banished back to the darkness. When the cathedral's bells tolled the morning hour, Father Damian rose unsteadily. He murmured a final prayer for Father O'Connor's soul and for all who had fallen to temptation. His body ached and blood spattered the marble, but a peace settled over him. He knew that even in this vast city, the light of faith had burned bright enough to vanquish the darkness. If you enjoyed this video, please do not forget to like, comment, or share this video with your friends. Subscribe to our channel to hear more stories like this one.